And I've worked with children that came to me and they were non-vocal. They didn't speak, they had seizures and terrible repetitive behaviors, and through balancing brain activity, and that takes more intensive in-person hands-on training, but now 2 years later, now the child's starting to speak, now they're starting to interact, now they're starting to learn. And that for me, that's really one of my major passions, and that just brings me so much joy. And I would do anything to help the kids. And autistic children are very sensitive. They don't like having caps and stuff on their head. So it can be quite arduous to do a brain mapping with a child. And I've had some cases where it took 4 hours because the child would just keep ripping it off. But I could see that parent where I know that I can see the hope dwindling and I can see the helplessness sinking in. And for me, it's just, I want to do everything possible to help give that child a chance. So I was actually hospitalized in my 3rd year of university after 3 straight panic attacks. And I'm a little over 6'2", and I was down to 140 pounds, emaciated, and went down some really dark roads. I had some friends who were in medical school. There's also a lot of stimulant and drug abuse, and there was a lot of negative influences. So I hit rock bottom, and there was a part of me that just was absolutely fed up living the way I was, with that constant tension, constant anxiety. And with a panic attack, you feel like you're literally gonna die. It's like feeling like you're gonna have a heart attack. And just made a commitment to myself that I was gonna do everything humanly possible to figure out why my brain was working the way it was, and then most importantly, to heal and optimize it. After making that decision, I also promised myself not only would I heal my brain, I would go out and achieve a few of my biggest dreams as well. Our brain cells are just these membranes that are constantly sensing and perceiving external fields and then changing their rate of resonance to those fields. And that's the beautiful thing about human beings. We influence each other. There's a lot of practitioners out there, they hire me, they're like, how come you're getting these results with these autistic kids and I'm using a similar technology, but I'm not getting the results? Well, that's because I spent thousands upon thousands of hours increasing my brain's alpha resonance, theta resonance. So when I'm with a child, I can literally begin to give them my brainwaves, because we've all heard of mirror neurons that fire when we watch someone perform an activity. And they fire as if we were performing the activity ourselves. It's the basis of empathy. Right? It's how we learn, is through imitation and mirroring. So the biggest influencer of another person's state is your own state.
When you are running a business, your mind is your heaviest piece of machinery. If it breaks down, everything stops. On the next episode of The Pathways to Mastery, I am sitting down with neuroscientist Chris Wiley. Chris isn't just theorizing about peak performance. He has conducted over 5,000 brain maps, physically measuring how interventions like nootropics, targeted nutrition, and neuro-linguistic programming actually rewire our neural pathways. After overcoming severe panic attacks and a total breakdown at 19, Chris dedicated his life to optimizing the human brain. Today, he uses neurotherapy to help high performers and professional athletes take their mental execution to the best-in-world level. We are stripping away the fluff to look at the hard science of mental resilience. We'll discuss how you can practically use his blueprint to sharpen your focus, regulate your nervous system under pressure, and build a brain capable of handling the extreme demands of your business. If you want to stop guessing and start optimizing your cognitive performance with real data, you need to hear this. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest, Chris Wiley.
First thing is, I need to thank you for being willing to do this interview. Really, really grateful. Thank you for your generosity for being here. And of course, you can send me the invoice after this call.
No, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm just happy to speak with, a human being like yourself who's out there making a difference. And if I can help empower people with the neuroscience, understand how significant the work, like, for example, NLP is, then that's what I'm here to do. So,
absolutely. Wonderful. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about how you got into neuroscience and what was the thing that actually interested you in neuroscience in the first place?
Absolutely. Well, I was actually studying to be a lawyer, to go to one of the Harvards or Yale's law school. So I was studying economics and business in my undergraduate, but always dealt with really bad anxiety and panic attacks.
Oh, wow.
And my solution as a kid was just to always outwork it. So I'd study day and night and just cram things by rote. That's also why I love mathematics and economics and science, because there was an objective answer. And I could memorize the answer and reproduce it on a test, and a teacher couldn't say anything.
Right.
But when it came to, like, let's say, essay writing on an exam, and then all that anxiety would get in the way and it would be terrible. So I was actually hospitalized in my third year of university after 3 straight panic attacks. And I'm a little over 6'2", and I was down to 140 pounds, emaciated, and went down some really dark roads. I had some friends who were in medical school, and there's also a lot of stimulant and drug abuse, and there was a lot of negative influences. So I hit rock bottom. And there was a part of me that just was absolutely fed up living the way I was, with that constant tension, constant anxiety. And with a panic attack, you feel like you're literally going to die. It's like feeling like you're going to have a heart attack. And just made a commitment to myself that I was going to do everything humanly possible to figure out why my brain was working the way it was, and then most importantly, to heal and optimize it. And then, after making that decision, I also promised myself that not only would I heal my brain, I would go out and achieve a few of my biggest dreams as well.
Wow, that's
afterwards.
Amazing. That's amazing. Well, I see that as a full circle experience, right? You've solved your own challenges. You're obviously no longer anxious, I guess. And one of the key things is, of course, being able to help other people to overcome the same kind of challenge will be an amazing thing. And look, you've reached so many thousands of people and continuing to do good work. And I'm really looking forward to your publication coming soon, hopefully.
Yes. So, yeah, it's right now we're building the science of how NLP changes and rewires the brain. So I'm using brain scans to literally do baseline testing, whether that's people with PTSD or anxiety, or just a lot of high performers have performance anxiety, especially financial traders before big deals, big trades. So I'm measuring a baseline scan and then just applying, let's say, for example, a basic get rid of bad memory technique. And the nice thing is, because I apprenticed with Richard Bandler for over a decade, I can both test and perform the techniques in real time. And we're building the science, seeing how these techniques change the brain in real time. So it's really exciting.
Awesome. And now that you've mentioned that, you mentioned you're looking at athletes. What exactly are you looking for when you scan these brains? There must be, I mean, for the benefit of our audience, most of them are not acquainted with neuroscience, even at a high level. Nor do they understand the categories of brainwaves. So would you be able to explain it and kind of give a simple explanation of how that works?
So basically what I'm using to scan the brain are medical grade EEGs. So these are electrodes which are measuring the cortical activity of the outer part of the cortex. So our brain's thinking cap, the part that controls focus, memory, emotions, language, speech, executive function. So the EEG is really great at measuring that cortical activity. And then with where technology's at today, we can actually compute images of brain activity that show how your brain's firing across all the major frequency ranges. So brain waves, these are these electrical waves that are produced by millions and billions of neurons firing in our brain simultaneously. It's almost like when you go to a sporting event. You have each person in the audience as individual neurons. And when they do the wave around the stadium, it produces a brain wave, which is that coordinated activity of all those neurons. So we have very slow waves, like deep delta waves, that dominate during deep sleep and unconsciousness. And then we have theta waves, which is when we're in that kind of daydreamy reverie state. So it's like when you wake up in the morning and your mind is kind of lucid and you're crossing across space-time, recalling memories, imagining great success in your minds of goals and things you want to achieve. That's the theta state. Then the alpha state is the state where there's no thought at all. You're just present in the moment in a zen-like state of flow. Then we have fast wave beta waves, which stimulate cortical thinking and processing. And then high beta, which shows up as either excitement or anxiety. And then we get into gamma bursts, which occur when there's heightened coordination between different networks. And that's where you get heightened processing, or even bliss. And that's where things like meditation or trance can be used to increase specific brainwave patterns.
Oh, interesting.
So when I work with like an entrepreneur, I don't go in with any preconceived notions.
Okay.
In fact, frequently I have them tell me absolutely nothing about them. And I will simply measure their cortical activity, see how their brain's firing, and then tell them a little bit about their brain, where we can see how executive function networks, how memory networks, how sleep networks, how they're firing. And then the name of the game is correcting those brainwave imbalances to improve function across the board.
I remember a long time ago when I was a student, I'm fortunate, I'm kind of like reverse of you. I didn't quite like math, primarily because of my teachers, right? So they installed a lot of bad ideas about math and how difficult it had to be.
Yeah.
But I turned to the arts, and there was memorizing stuff and generating a lot of step-by-step notes so that I could really get into the meat of things.
Yeah.
And I remember a period of time I was surprised by a surprise test, as some professors would do.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I didn't get very nervous because everyone else was freaking out, and I had a technique to be able to deal with this.
Right.
So I remember I only had 6 hours. In other words, I only got to know at the end of the day, I had only that much time to sleep, and I had to memorize a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
It was across like 12 chapters. And I remember listing down everything, and by the end of it, I had like 3 or 4 hours left. And I remember going through a process of just dozing off for half an hour, waking up, memorizing stuff, dozing off another 15 minutes, waking up, and going through that process. And I remembered everything.
Yeah.
How do you explain that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's brilliantly done because the brain fires in rhythms. So you'll have a period of, it's generally around 90 minutes of left hemispheric dominance. That's when you're actively in kind of uptime, fast wave frequencies, beta, high beta. That's what stimulates information processing. But in order for that information to go from flux to being actually saved into the hard drive, you actually need a period of downtime where you get the slower wave frequencies like theta waves, which help that information get crystallized in the memory through regions like the hippocampus. So part of the reason why people have so much amnesia for stuff they're trying to learn and reading is because they don't have that period of consolidation to allow the information to crystallize neurologically.
Okay. So that's kind of like, I did a little bit of basic psychology and basic neuroscience as well. There's a process that enables the brain cells to solidify and consolidate.
Exactly.
Long-term potentiation, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly, yeah.
So this is interesting because in terms of a learning habit, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they're voracious learners.
Right.
But many of them have to rely on a second brain using AI or dumping stuff in order for them to retrieve this information effectively. What would you say to a person who wants to learn a vast amount of stuff but has very, very little time? What's the best way to do that?
Well, that's where you can be really, really efficient with your consolidation periods. So there is an element, even if you are the most titanic entrepreneur and you want to push pedal to the metal and work as many hours as possible, you can integrate very efficient, and this is what I train with clients, like I'll train them to be able to get to those high amplitude theta states at will.
Wow.
So that way, instead of needing 30 minutes of meditation, they could get there for a period of 2 to 3 minutes, but it's very high level, full brain theta. And that's important for creative problem solving and solution generating, right? Because AI and the web has all this information and normative data, but every single entrepreneur has their own unique experience and permutations of data. And the magic occurs is when you combine the science and information with your own unique experience to generate new creative solutions. And that's going to happen actually in those slower wave states where you get more theta wave production. The reason why you want to access those slower wave states because you get greater communication across the whole brain. So if you take a whole bunch of stimulants like coffee, for example, or things that keep you awake and vigilant, You'll get a lot of like localized processing in your prefrontal cortex, but in order to generate those, genius ideas where you go from $1 million ideas to $1 billion ideas, right? Where you get those ideas that just totally change the game. It's actually in those slower wave states that really promote plasticity and creativity. So I would just train an entrepreneur to get there more efficiently, faster, so that way they don't need to be there as long.
What patterns do you see in burnt out, athletes, founders, the people that you've scanned?
Yeah.
What kind of patterns of brainwaves do you see?
Yeah.
And what kind of process do you use in order to correct it to level them up and get them out of burnout?
Right. Well, I mean, one of the classic cases of burnout is we just see a ton of slow wave frequencies, deep delta, right? People come up scanning people this week, and a lot of people here are sleep deprived, or they're not firing all cylinders. They're like, why do I have so much delta? Well, that is a sign of neurological fatigue, is slow waves, especially if we're measuring your brain eyes open, right? You want to see delta in deep sleep. So if you have it while your eyes open, it's almost like your brain's stuck in first gear. And then, of course, the question is, okay, how do we fix this? How do we optimize this? Well, I kind of have the big five. And the big five is first is neurological training. So have actual technologies that can stimulate and modulate how parts of the brain are firing. So we can, if your prefrontal cortex, the CEO of the brain, is running a little slow, we can actually modulate and speed it up. Now that's kind of high-end tech. Now the next piece is, as you know, and we both do, is the psychological side. So using the NLP, using linguistics, using mental techniques, using trance to help change brainwave activity. And that's the essence of the book. The neuroscience of NLP is we're showing how NLP can change the brain, and you actually don't need external technologies. You can use your own brain to rewire and change your own brain. And the reason why I love that is because those are skills that once you learn how to mentally control your brain waves, then you have that for the rest of your life. So it's a one-time investment, and it's drug-free, it's side effect-free, and it's just going to generalize to lots of positive changes. Then I'll customize an individual supplementation and nutrition. Big piece, we all eat, and what we eat has a massive impact on our neurochemistry, right? All our neurochemicals, whether it's dopamine, acetylcholine, norepinephrine, they're all made from amino acids that are absorbed through our gut. So there's huge room for optimization on the nutritional side. Then there's the environmental side, where everything from the amount of electromagnetic frequencies in our environment, our light environment, has a big impact on our brain. In fact, companies hire me to actually test how their products, like one company's built a multi-million-dollar business through using the brain scan testing I did to show how EMFs from Wi-Fi, cell phones change brain activity, and how their product can help mitigate that. And then the last piece is, it's kind of more an element of the spiritual side, right? Where you begin to really find your purpose, and you find a way to really motivate yourself and get the most out of your brain, right? And once you kind of go through those 5 variables, then you can get everything working for you, and then you can start rocking life like an absolute superhero.
Awesome. Very nice to hear that NLP is somewhere in there. When I've had one recent case of a burnt out entrepreneur. She nearly lost everything, and she couldn't do literally anything.
Right.
She was overweight. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't stay awake. I mean, she was like a zombie. And one of the things that I suggested to her was to just get into a form of trance. I sent her an audio, just to run through and just get herself grounded.
Yeah.
Does that affect the brainwave states? Like just a simple trance induction, a simple meditation, that does help, does it?
Oh yeah, and all those scans and testing, they're going to be in the book.
All right.
Like one frequency range, trance really increases powerfully are theta frequencies.
Okay.
And something magical happens in theta. In theta, 4 to 8 hertz, that's when our catecholamines, like dopamine and norepinephrine, replenish. So by getting someone into trance, where their theta waves increase, not only is that going to help balance the limbic system, because I'm sure some people may have heard of like the amygdala, our brain's emotional alarm center, and the hippocampus, our brain's memory center. Well, we know stress downregulates neurogenesis in the hippocampus, but the opposite is also true. If you restore the theta rhythm in the limbic networks, it stabilizes that network, reduces stress, restores neurogenesis, restores dopamine, and can help you quickly heal from a case of adrenal burnout. So trance would be a very effective modality. And then I might add it in, I might send a client some neuroentrainment with some theta wave frequencies on top of the trance, just so that way they're really getting a massive theta entrainment effect.
I noticed also, and interesting because I'm a musician. So one of the things that I used to do was to write my own music because I was inspired by Richard in Denver.
Yeah.
So I was excited by just writing my own pieces and put myself into a nice, peaceful state.
Yeah.
And what I did was something similar. I mean, I'm not a sound engineer. I'll just layer some theta waves in the background and it seemed to help. Something else that I noticed was the rhythm of speech. Does the rhythm of speech influence a person's brainwaves?
Absolutely. And this is where rhythm's coded in the non-dominant hemisphere, which for most people would be the right hemisphere if they're right-handed. And rhythm has a big impact on our state of being, and it's largely unconscious, right? We're just aware of the fact that we feel really good to listening to someone speak with good tonality and rhythm. And one thing I see increases in alpha rhythm. I see decreases in high beta waves, especially in the auditory cortex. So a lot of anxiety-related problems are caused by excitatory activity in the temporal lobes. Well, those are the auditory processors. So now all of a sudden, if you give that tonality and rhythm, that input to the brain, it actually modulates the firing of the auditory cortex and takes it out of a state of stress. So tonality is one of the most, fundamental ways to change.
And underrated.
Absolutely, yeah.
No wonder most of my teachers whom I didn't like had terrible tonality.
Terrible voice. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's also why a lot of people listening to this, if they have anxiety, it's because they got a crappy voice inside their head running.
And of course NLP helps to kind of like remove that, replace that with something a little bit more effective for the directions, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got entrepreneurs who may be burnt out, but we also have the other spectrum, the people who want to become entrepreneurs, but they're anxious. They're unwilling to take the next step forward. The whole go for it state is missing.
Yeah.
What do you see in the brain patterns of such people, if you've seen?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, the unknown is a major source of anxiety. And, it creates stress, right? And that's where the answer to build confidence and certainty is to develop extreme competence, to acquire skills upon skills upon skills. So that way, rather than guessing whether you can be successful in a situation, you actually know because you have the skills that are going to make it likely for you to succeed. Now, of course, you're going to have to go in and do something the first time. And there's going to be some level of adrenaline, some level of nerves. But that's where, you can acquire skills like linguistic skills in NLP, mental techniques in NLP, learn a little bit about neuroscience, learn a little bit about your brain. Because if you have a balanced brain and you have accomplished that, going out and be successful in a business, there's a high likelihood of you being able to succeed, right? Because this is where things like happiness and even motivation, it can be a little overrated. The key state you need to be able to access is a state of internal peace and brainwave balance. So that way, no matter what type of turbulence and chaos you experience externally, mentally, you can always reset, balance, and keep carrying forward.
So I can see some of the techniques like anchoring coming into play, self-hypnosis, talking to yourself in a particular way if you're trained in the Milton model, for example, and putting yourself in rhythmic breathing. I believe that there are breathwork techniques that can actually go with this as well.
Yeah.
So what I've suspected for the longest time is we change our breathing, we change our speech patterns, the rhythm of our speech patterns, and the brain waves shift because similar to, let's say, music, it changes the mood and so on. Now, for athletes, it could be as simple as, okay, let's do a technique, and then we measure after you've done performance 1 versus performance 2. for an entrepreneur, and we were having this conversation in the corridor, some of the entrepreneurs sometimes end up having really long periods of stress.
Right.
How would they, is there a way for them to kind of like do a reset? Is it just a break state? Do they need some kind of a routine or ritual to keep them more at peace?
Right. Well, I think the first thing to be aware of, the fact that entrepreneurship is a long-term game, means that any skills you acquire to master your brain and mind are going to have compounding returns over a much longer period of time, and you'll see even greater results. Mm-hmm. Right? The first thing to start off is to recognize the fact that we all have neurological quirks and idiosyncrasies, and all our brains are wired uniquely. And to some degree, we all have some level of neurological kryptonite. And sometimes our neurological greatest strength can also be our greatest weaknesses, right? Especially for people who are motivated machines, okay. Right? You can get easily motivated and get easily enthusiastic to do projects and stuff, but that same fast wave activity could potentially manifest as anxiety. So step one for an entrepreneur is to identify any neurological patterns that may be holding you back. And then once you become aware of that, then you can go acquire the skills to rewire those bottlenecks. So because we all will have some bottlenecks, and if you fix those bottlenecks, now all of a sudden your performance, everything elevates. Like for me, once I rewired and healed my own anxiety, now all my fast wave activity, now my super fast firing frontal lobes and temporal lobes, now I have all this neurological activity power me to success without being held back or constricted by the anxiety. So that's where with like an entrepreneur is identify what are those bottlenecks? What's that neurological kryptonite? When you conquer the kryptonite, then you become the proverbial superhero version of yourself.
Beautiful. Do you have examples of different kinds of kryptonite?
Yeah, well, I just mentioned, let's say, super fast brain.
Okay.
So that's why I'll do the brain scan and I'll be able to see the neurological patterns. So let's say you have really fast firing frontal lobes, right? So that will make you very analytical, very strategic, a lot of fast wave activity. So you'll think and you'll process, you'll learn really quick, but perhaps you have a real difficult time shutting off your business brain when you're at home with your family and kids, and it ruins the personal life. Or you have difficulty shutting off that frontal lobe when sleeping at night. So therefore, I would train a client to be able to activate and deactivate their frontal lobes at will.
Okay.
And NLP techniques play a big role in that.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, a number of entrepreneurs who are listening to this probably wouldn't know and have access to these techniques, but I'll fill them in later, right?
Yeah.
Because the key is when we see patterns in these brainwave activities, you almost instinctively know, because you've seen so many scans, you know exactly what to do with them. So could you walk me through, if I were a client and gonna have to do a brain scan, what would you have to do with me?
So what I want to do with the brain scans and the EEG is we'll cap you up, these 20 plus electrodes on your brain.
Is it a heavy thing?
No, it's just like wearing a swim cap.
Okay.
Only it's got these little electrodes and they're simply measuring brain activity. Nothing's getting sent in. Then once we have you capped up, we're measuring brainwave activity in real time. Okay. Frontal lobes, which control focus, executive function, they're like the CEO of the brain. The sides of the brain are the temporal lobes, which control our mood, our emotionality, our temperament. Then we have regions at the top of the brain, like the parietal lobes, where our physical body and our somatosensory cortex is housed. And we have regions at the back of the brain, the visual cortex. So we're measuring brainwave activity in real time. Then what I'll do is I'll test the brain across different states of consciousness. I'll test eyes open. I'll test eyes closed. I'll test while an individual tries to relax or in a meditative state. And I'll see how the brain fires across different states. Then I'll even work with a client and I'll teach them how to, maybe it's with NLP techniques, teach them how to activate and increase their frontal lobe firing or decrease it at will. So that way we see the flexibility the brain has and what its brainwave output is.
And how long does this take?
I do all this within a 90-minute period.
Okay. And once this 90-minute period is done, I'm suspecting that there might be further sessions that maybe you're working with them and coaching them and using some NLP on them in order to train them and measure again. How long does that take typically?
Yeah. Well, every brain is different, but the thing is, the brain learns really fast when you give it a new pattern, especially something it's lacking in, right? So let's say someone's having difficulty with memory, right? You're an entrepreneur, you're working really hard, and you've really been pushing pedal to the metal, but you find memory and coding and clarity, it's just a little compromised, right? And if I did a brain scan, maybe I'll see in the temporal lobes, there's a lack of slow wave theta, right? So I would then want to correct that imbalance. And so we have all the tools available to us. We have NLP techniques, training the brain to get into trance to increase theta. I have actual technologies. If I'm in person, I can put like Tesla coils or those parts of the brain and literally send in theta frequencies to increase those parts of the brain, get them to produce more theta. I do a lot with like autistic kids and stuff, kids that are non-vocal. Then there's nutritional, consuming certain amino acids to activate those parts of the brain. So we can correct those imbalances very quickly, and an entrepreneur should get the real life subjective changes where not only does the brain scan show changes in brain waves, but they feel different and their memory's working different. So
you mentioned autistic kids. Could you talk a little bit more about that? What do you notice in terms of the difference? Because it's something that's on the increase, on the rise, even in Singapore.
Yeah, absolutely. And autism really been a passion of mine since I was 19 years old, because when I was going to heal my brain, I connected with a doctor and he had an autistic son. So it became kind of like my pet mission to figure out how the autistic brain works and then work to heal the autistic brain, because autism is something that mystifies most people out there. And for people who don't know, autism is usually characterized by social delays, cognitive impairments, and then behavioral problems like behavioral rigidity. Now, when I do these scans with autistic children, there are some notorious patterns that repeat over and over again in the autistic brain. One of them is the complete lack of the alpha rhythm in the brain. And just by restoring the alpha rhythm, things like cognition and social engagement all increase. And that's where, for parents, if they have an autistic son or daughter, just getting out into nature, spending more time in nature, connecting with the Schumann resonance can increase alpha wave production and help improve their kids' function. Right? Because parents will take kids on vacation, whether it's to a warmer, sunnier destination where there's a beach and there's water, and then all of a sudden the child starts speaking a little bit, or they start interacting more, they start noticing faces and emotions more. So with autism, balancing brainwave output can be very life-changing. And I've worked with children that came to me and they were non-vocal. They didn't speak, they had seizures and terrible repetitive behaviors, and through balancing brain activity, and that takes more intensive in-person hands-on training, but now 2 years later, now the child's starting to speak, now they're starting to interact, now they're starting to learn. And that, for me, that's really one of my major passions, and that just brings me so much joy. And I would do anything to help the kids. And autistic children are very sensitive. They don't like having caps and stuff on their head, right? So it can be quite arduous to do a brain mapping with a child. And I've had some cases where it took 4 hours because the child would just keep ripping it off. But I could see that parent where I know that I can see the hope dwindling, and I can see that helplessness sinking in. And for me, it's just, I want to do everything possible to help give that child a chance. So yeah, I've done 4 or 5 hours to just get a simple 3-minute reading on an EEG.
Well, this is going to be a game changer for those parents, because you're right, they're helpless. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs, the reason why they're entrepreneurs is because of their kids who have autism. And it's absolutely the case. I think it's going to bring a lot of hope to these parents. You mentioned the Schumann resonance. Tell me a little bit more about that. It sounds familiar to me, but I can't quite place it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Earth is electromagnetic in nature.
Right.
And there's a natural resonance between the Earth and the ionosphere, and it just happens to be in the alpha range. And when we are out in nature and we're connected, and everybody knows this, if you go for a walk in a forest or a walk along a beach, you start to feel really good. Your mind and the busy brain starts to quiet down, and you start to get into just a Zen-like state where you're just in the moment. And part of that is the increased alpha wave production in the brain. Because the human brain works by entrainment. Our brain cells are just these membranes that are constantly sensing and perceiving external fields and then changing their rate of resonance to those fields. And that's the beautiful thing about human beings is we influence each other. And right now as we're talking, if we were both hooked up to a brain scan, we probably could begin to see some of our brain waves beginning to synchronize.
Oh, that would have been awesome.
Maybe for the next interview. And that's the biggest thing when it comes to influence and persuasion. Right? If you're working with someone and you want their brain to produce more alpha brainwave, you know what you need to do? You need to produce alpha brainwave. Because there's a lot of practitioners out there, they hire me and they're like, how come you're getting these results with these autistic kids and I'm using a similar technology, but I'm not getting the results? Well, that's because I spent thousands upon thousands of hours increasing my brain's alpha resonance, theta resonance. So when I'm with a child, I can literally begin to give them my brainwave. Because we've all heard of mirror neurons, neurons that fire when we watch someone perform an activity. And they fire as if we were performing the activity ourselves. It's the basis of empathy. Right? It's how we learn is through imitation and mirroring, right? So the biggest influencer of another person's state is your own state. So I think this is great with all the NLP work you are doing with entrepreneurs, because giving them more awareness of their state and then giving them tools to be able to change their state is going to give them the ability to profoundly influence other people.
Yeah, now that you've mentioned that, it's sparking quite a number of ideas. The first one is, teachers need to do this.
Oh, yes.
Because they're influencing like the next generation of people, leaders. And at the same time, most of them are also caught up in a loop of negativity or insecurity. Yeah, it's going to show up in their brain for sure. I'm pretty sure of that. And at the same time, leaders most certainly need to have control over their brain states because they're going to tell their employees to do certain things. And unfortunately, not all leaders are really that pleasant when they say that, right?
Right.
Do any forms of delegation. Have you seen anything in the education sector where teachers who are now trained to do better control over their brain states, do they perform better in class as an instructor, as a teacher?
This is a great demographic where absolutely more teachers should learn how to control their language, both internally in their own brain as well as their output to help and train the children's brains. And, unfortunately, it's all about curriculum, right? And you have so much, system that kind of gets in the way. But ultimately, we want to teach kids skills that they'll be able to have for the rest of their life that will help them to be better problem solvers. Right? We have mental health crisis going right now. We have mental health problems. What's the solution to that? Being a better mental problem solver. And that's where the cognitive skills of NLP, the linguistic skills of NLP, the neuroscience-based skills that I'm bringing to the table hopefully can give an individual all the tools so that way they can control their own brain state at will. Because the name of the game for high performance is being able to mobilize the optimal brain state for the task at hand. Every task is going to be different. There's going to be time when you need to fire up and get your team extremely motivated. And that's when you want your frontal lobe shifting into high beta. There's also going to be a time where you need to calm the team down and bring them to a state of balance and certainty. And to do that, you have to be able to reach a state of alpha resonance so you can bring them there. So there really is an element of, yes, we need to give teachers, these are the tools, these are the practical mechanism and ways you can change how your brain fires. So that way you can help your team optimize their brain. So perhaps it's a frontier that we could begin to spearhead.
Sure. Yeah, I used to teach a whole bunch of teachers and they play off, many of them will play off a lot of negative energy, especially if they had a bad day in the class. They bring it back to the staff room.
Yeah.
They complain to each other, that kind of thing. So it's not likely to be it's likely to amplify brain waves in the wrong direction.
Exactly.
So
a lot of people and kids just think of school and immediately there's a stress response in the brain. It's a negative anchor. Right? You say homework to kids, all of a sudden they start feeling bad. You measure the temporal lobes, you see a high beta stress response. right? We want to begin anchoring states of desire, states of curiosity, right? And that's where the flexibility in the brain and the brilliance will open up. So yeah, we need to rewire a lot of these anchors for sure.
So would you say that, okay, I'll give you a couple examples. I think I've gone through some very interesting times. I mean, there was once I was so stressed up, opening up the emails
Right.
caused me to just shut down my computer and not want to work. And I'll do other things. And I recognize that as a stress response because it was just too many things going on, too many pressures happening at the same time. But because I knew NLP, it was easier for me to get out of it.
Right.
Now, for the average person, once they've learned these skills, do you still see resistances and pushback? People who are not willing to adapt or change to this new rhythm or this new approach to doing things?
Well, the thing is, the reason why people have resistance and skepticism is because they tried so many things that hasn't worked. So as soon as you give a client a skill that not only works, but is extremely effective, then I have the added component of adding the scientific evidence of showing the scan on how their brain changes. Once you give them something that works and they can see it changes their brain, there's little to no hesitation or pushback because now they can go get a result. Right? And then once you start getting results, the progress is the mother of dopamine. And that's what further stimulates motivation because progress breeds progress, dopamine breeds dopamine, and success breeds success. So yes, there can be an initial bit of inertia and skepticism and pushback, but that's where if you can give someone tools and produce change, you can build that conviction very early on that now an individual suddenly believes that their brain can change, that they can get better, that they can do this. So it's really important to build those convictions in your capacity to learn and your capacity to earn as an entrepreneur, because then you go out and you pursue bigger challenges.
So whenever there's, it's a terrible cycle, right? You've got founders who have burnout, and then they cannot handle the cognitive load of what they're doing,
Right.
and then they do make bad decisions that cause this entire vicious cycle to take place. Managing their states, helping them to learn skills and be competent, maybe even having a regular practice of getting into good states and helping them to learn how to do that, obviously helps. Now, when somebody they may have had a lot of motivation and drive, but they seem to stop at a certain threshold where maybe they're not pushing further. Like, let's say athletes even, they're running, they don't surf through the pain in order to get to a higher level of athletic performance when they actually could. And some entrepreneurs are also like that. They could raise the bar, but they're just not doing it. Is there anything that you see in the brain and the scans where, I don't know, maybe they're not fully stimulated, like they need to trigger some form of push through, some kind of determination?
Yeah, I was working with an entrepreneur last night, and his voltage in his temporal lobes was a little bit blunted, and he was just a little fatigued, a little overworked, and he was having difficulty getting himself motivated to take his business to the next level. So I had to do a little digging to find the exact situation. It was just like a moment in time that brought out that heightened motivated state that produced the desired response in the brain. And it turned out when he runs marathons, the last 5 miles, he was in second or third, and this guy was a minute or two ahead of him. And he said in his mind, I got to speed up and go get that bleeping guy. And it mobilized this whole excitatory response across his frontal lobes and temporal lobes. His brain completely lit up, high voltage. And that was a moment in time we captured. And then we used that moment as the analogy for, okay, what is the mountain you're climbing in your business?
Right.
Or what is the path you're following? And then begin to take just that one little burst of neuroactivity and get the brain firing just like that in the desired situations.
Right.
That's where the NLP skills become really handy, is because if you get the right circuits firing at the right time, then you'll get the behavioral result. If the circuits don't fire, then you get the state of, oh, I'm not motivated, or oh, the fear or the stress, the pain is overwhelming.
Okay, all or none, right?
Yeah.
So if, let's say, I've got someone who has like a faded memory, would you use forms of revivification to bring back that memory and to enhance it, similar to how we do it in NLP, so that they can get that excitatory response?
I mean, you can. So the question is, what's going to be the most effective intervention for that specific individual?
Right.
Because
and it's all context, right?
Every brain's a little bit unique, So NLP is a great skill set to be able to do it mentally. And the reason why I love that is because it can also be done virtually as well, where a lot of like the neurotech I use to rewire the brain requires in person. But NLP, and again, these are skills that generalize. If you teach someone how to sharpen and increase the clarity of memory, right? Most people think that memory is just something that happens to them. It's something their brain does. Right? So now to get them in the driver's seat of operating their own thoughts, this is a novel concept and idea. Now for me, I do use the brain scans because I can show people that as they change how they think, as they, increase the vividness of a memory and the size and the brightness, these modalities, we can see how the visual centers, the motivation centers, the frontal cortex, how it changes its pattern of activation. Right. Then people see that, they go, oh, they get excited about it, right? Because now they can see, oh, wait a minute, I actually can control my brain. And mental activity is just, it's the one thing we all do, we all think. We all have memory. And if you can learn to control your thoughts and memories, that is the doorway to control your brain.
Even imagination, right? Like we could just imagine a good time, and that should produce something similar to accessing a past memory.
Absolutely, and that's where in the brain it produces a very, very similar response, both real and imagined experience. In fact, a lot of people's anxiety and fears, right? True. Fear of failure, fear of success, what it is the imagination being usurped. Imagining worst case scenarios happening. And people know that those worst case scenarios produce a very tangible effect on the gut brain, where people can get themselves, to full on panic or anxiety and keep themselves up all night, right? The two terrible words that are destroying lives, the what if generator, what if this, what if that. So imagination has a huge impact on our gut brain, and a huge impact on how our brain fires.
Wow, I think this is the next frontier really for NLP. I mean, I've been working with NLP for such a long time. I think the brain science really has, some parts of it has caught up with NLP, but I think this is really timely. It gives us a little bit more of a inside snapshot of how the interventions actually work, how they are provable. They're not, like everybody calls it pseudoscience, but they're really, firstly, unable to really measure it. Well, not until recent decades. Secondly, they're measuring the wrong thing, right? They're trying to say, okay, your whatever language or your eye movement patterns are not psychologically grounded and so on and so forth. I've always told people that it's more of a pattern detection thing in their language, in their patterns of behavior, rather than just looking at the science and the empirical evidence of the past. Because I don't think they've really captured it. So interestingly enough, I came across some research by, well, not specifically by him, but some of his colleagues, Andrew Huberman from Stanford, and he talks about how the anterior mid-cingulate cortex grows as a result of someone actually pushing through pain and actually growing that piece. It speaks to how amazing the brain actually is and how plastic it actually is. But then most people don't even have the fundamental tools or the skills to even
So that's the part that's missing. Right? With the podcasters and the science is, okay, what are the actual skills that then can mobilize those changes in the brain? And absolutely, the anterior mid-cingulate cortex is one of the seats of willpower. And every time you consciously do something that is very difficult and challenging, it strengthens the connectivity in that part of the brain. And for example, the amygdala has connections to all our cortex. And through mental activity, through consciously being able to do difficult things, you strengthen your cortex's ability to regulate those subcortical structures of the brain. So that way you develop the neurological ability to overcome fear, the neurological ability to power through anxiety. And over time, you can rewire your brain and you can turn an anxious brain into a tenacious brain.
Yeah, very powerful. I think also, and this is just a little bit of an aside, even though I think the founders I work with will really benefit from this. There's this experiment done by Ellen Langer in Harvard called the counterclockwise experiment. I'm sure you've heard of it. So she takes people who are in their late or early 80s, late 70s or early 80s, brings them into a retrofitted room, fits them with stuff from 20 or 25 years before, and they measure facial countenance, like before the retreat or after the retreat, which one appears younger, right? And surprise, surprise, when somebody goes into that kind of a retreat, very elaborate retreat, right? Where they have the retrofitted rooms, they come out looking like they're younger. I mean, these are, of course, lab experiments with different photographs and stuff.
Yeah.
So couldn't we do that with our mind? I mean, and if we could measure the right kinds of neural patterns.
Well, I mean, Dr. Richard Bandler has been doing it for how many decades, where, you do the age regression with trance, and you go back and you're just using memory, and it's producing physiological changes. And as we're seeing neurological changes, whether that's serotonin, which will just help to vaporize stress, improve mood, endorphins, which, generally globally improve mood, whether it's, oxytocin, increasing pair bonding. So absolutely our neurology is changing our protein levels. And that's the essence of, plasticity, is every thought we think, every memory we remember, every behavior we do is subtly but yet powerfully altering the wiring of our brain.
Wow.
So beauty starts at the neurological level.
And beauty is within, really, right?
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for that. I think it's amazing. I think this is really the new frontier. I think a lot of entrepreneurs should get on this, start to rewire their brain. Now, if anyone wants to get in touch with you and connect with you to get some work done, how would they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the best way to connect with me is just through the website, thegamechangerchriswiley.com. I also encourage people, if they want to see, kind of get the up-to-date what I'm doing daily in terms of research and client work, to connect with me on social media, The Game Changer Chris Wiley, where I will share video insights of me doing brain scans, or me doing brain scans and NLP at the same time, or me talking about brain nutrition. And I think for everyone watching this is, step one is just become more aware of your brain's current state. And then if you're curious, then come, do a brain scan with me. We can see how your brain's firing, and that can be really useful data. And then start to identify, okay, what are the variables that really resonate with you to begin to change? And maybe for you, it's going, I'm going to start eating better for my brain. So I'm going to start eating foods that are richer in omega-3s, richer in choline, rich in lots of phytonutrients, so I get a bit more neurogenesis. Or maybe, because I work with a ton of billionaires, and their brain is great, their bank account's great, but their body's falling apart. And, they can't take the money with them, and you can leave it for your family, but you might want to enjoy the empire that you built. So therefore, okay, maybe we need to optimize the physical body. So I will design physical training programs to optimize neurologic function. So you don't have to go to the gym for an hour or 2 hours a day, but 20 minutes of strategic exercise to stimulate neurogenesis and BDNF brain growth can help you to be more productive in your work. So really begin to look at these different variables, see where you can make improvements and optimize, and then you optimize the whole system as a whole.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
I love it. It really is a system. It's something that can be done. It's something that's very clear, at least to those who know what's going on. And to those who are just not initiated, they just have to start now. So Chris, thank you so much for being on this podcast. I'm really grateful, and I definitely will keep in touch with you. Maybe I'll need a brain scan myself, just to make sure that I'm optimizing myself so that I can get my clients the best results that they can. So thank you very much, and I really appreciate you.
My pleasure, Stuart.